Hi, I'm Jerry, and this is an increasingly inaccurately entitled 1000-word guide to the first anti-aircraft guns, or more correctly their first uses in ground-to-air combat. During the Franco-Prussian War of 19th July 1870 to 28th of January 1871, the Prussians laid siege to Paris. During the siege, communications with the outside world were completely cut off, and acting on the suggestions of balloonists Felix Nadar and Eugene Godard, a hot air balloon service was established with the purpose of carrying letters, a few passengers, and carrier pigeons so that a pigeon post could be established. This was the only way that the rest of France could communicate with the city. The balloons proved to be quite successful, and 66 flights were carried out. Such was the demand, 2 factories were established for their production. Outgoing mail is estimated at around 2.5 million letters. Incoming messages, carried by the pigeons, is estimated at around 60,000 items of an attempted 95,000 dispatched. Both official, that is to say government, and private messages were carried in both directions. Having gone to considerable effort to cut off Paris, including cutting the telegraph cable, the Prussians were understandably rather irritated by this, and resolved to do something about it. The Krupp Company, a major steel and armaments manufacturer, mounted a modified 37mm cannon on a high-angled mount, which was in turn placed on a horse-drawn cart for the purposes of shooting down balloons. The cart allowed the gun to be deployed rapidly when the balloons were sighted. How successful this was cannot be determined. Of the 66 hot air balloon flights out of Paris, 5 were captured by the Prussians and 3 went missing. It is not known if any were the victim of Krupp's Ballonabwehrkanone, although it is tempting to assume that they were. Balloons notwithstanding, the advent of heavier-than-air aircraft made necessary some means of shooting them down. By 1909, Krupp had developed a 65mm anti-aircraft gun, and by the following year several armament manufacturers had published information on artillery with a similar role. This is very soon after aircraft had proven their potential as military aircraft, so clearly it was accepted that air power and the means of combating it would be in the near future. If emphasis was needed, it was provided by the Italian use of air power during the Italian-Turkish War of 1911 to 1912. The easiest way to sum up their efforts was provided by the London Times on August 12, 1912, when an article stated that no one can have observed the work accomplished by the Italian airplanes at Tripoli without being deeply impressed by the courage and the ability of the Italian pilots, and without being convinced of the valuable use of aviation in wartime. Given the number of firsts achieved by the Italians during this war, it is perhaps inevitable that first anti-aircraft actions are recorded as well. On October 26, 1911, just 3 days after the world's first combat flight, see my Blériot Type 11 video, a Nieuport flown by Capitano Riccardo Moiso became the first aircraft to sustain damage from ground fire. While reconnoitering an enemy position, he discovered an encampment of an estimated 6,000 men, some of whom duly opened fire on him with their rifles, scoring 3 hits to the wing, but no major damage. In the same conflict, Capitano Carlo Montu, pictured here on the left, became the first pilot to be wounded in air combat when he was struck by a bullet from ground fire. This took place on January 31, 1912, over Tobruk. He survived and was able to return to base for treatment. Subsequently, he took to wearing the bullet that nearly killed him as a pendant. So far, an aircraft had not actually been shot down from the ground. This was to change during World War I. Apologies in advance for my terrible pronunciation of Serbian names and places. On 30th of September 1915, troops of the Serbian army observed 7 Austro-Hungarian aircraft approaching Kragujevac, Serbia's primary armaments manufacturing city. Soldiers shot at them with shotguns and machine guns, but failed to prevent them from dropping 45 bombs, hitting military installations, the railway station, and other mostly civilian targets. During the bombing raid, Private Radoje Raka Lutowach was located in the hills around the city. He fired his cannon at the enemy aircraft and successfully shot down the Rumpler Taube, piloted by Captain von Schäfer and his gunner Oton Chris. It crashed in the city and both pilots died from their injuries. The cannon Lutowach used was not designed as an anti-aircraft gun. It was instead a slightly modified Turkish cannon captured during the First Balkan War of 1912. This was the first occasion in history that a military aircraft was shot down with a ground-to-air fire. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this and would like to hear more of the same, please like and subscribe.